Today, I'm very happy and honored, right, to introduce Shu-Jie and the supervisor, right, Professor Dongling Guo, because they have solved a long-standing research problem over, right, 1 decade at least. First, I will describe this research problem a little bit. And then I will quickly introduce our speaker today, Shu-Jie. Yeah, the basic idea is very simple, right? Like Bitcoin white paper 2008, the implementation 2009. But as researchers, we need to make sure that the protocol is secure. That's why, right, we need some theoretical analysis of security for the Bitcoin protocol. To the best of my knowledge, maybe the first theoretical analysis was around 2014. But number one, right, the proof was a bit low and at least not good for teaching purpose. If you are like me, right, had to teach some blockchain courses in the past. And second, and if we really look into right the proof because it was long, complicated, right, very often you can identify some minor mistakes, so not stable enough. Maybe and to highlight this, let me share with you some personal stories. I was interested in this topic maybe early 2019. The motivation was from teaching. Right? I want to teach the analysis. And then I realized that existing analysis maybe like too complicated. Then I tried to develop some new analysis easy for teaching. Right? At that time, another professor at UIUC, Professor Lin Ren, he was doing the same thing. But then luckily, we had a chance to meet each other at a workshop UC Berkeley. Right? And then we quickly exchanged our proofs. We realized that, oh, like our proofs are both of our proofs had some like issues. So the conclusion is it's not easy. It's not easy, right, to come up with a complete, rigorous, but also right easy to teach proof. So, but after that, I had my first child, right, during the COVID. It changed everything. Like, it's like for personal reasons, I had to stop, right, this like deep research. And this explains, right, why kind of then like my research areas become a little bit broader and kind of, yeah, so I will skip this family part. But after about 2 years, right after I come back, finally my family was stable. Right, I come back, I realized like several great researchers had been doing this for a while, right, including our like star professor David Shear. And then I realized that wow, maybe it was late. But still, one thing is clear, right? At that time, maybe 2022, mostly upper bounds and lower bounds. Right? We didn't have exact analysis. The keyword is exact, right? It's hard. So and then I told myself, okay, and this can be some of my long-term objectives, right? After I kind of finish my current projects, after everything is stable, and I will like go back to this. And that's why, as you can imagine, almost my last sentence on this topic, when I noticed the paper by Professor Dongling Guo and Shu-Jie, I was so excited. Wow, finally, right? The exact probability was there in my personal opinion. It is a breakthrough, right? I will spend more time to go through all the steps. I just had a quick read, right? And the proof seemed to be elegant and beautiful. And in the near future, right, I will like give more time to have a complete read. So now, right after you know the story, maybe and you will like me and like very look forward to this presentation. Last part about Shu-Jie. And Shu-Jie is currently a Ph.D. student at Northwestern University, and her research interests include information theory, blockchain, distributed computing, signal processing, and communication networks. She just told me she is expected to graduate next year, right? Maybe around the summertime, and she will be right open to interesting opportunities, such as postdoctoral fellows and other right opportunities. So if you are interested in this work and particular right in Shu-Jie, and feel free to reach out to her directly. Okay, and Shu-Jie, now the floor is yours. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much. So, first, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks a lot for the invitation. So today, I will talk about our work, which is how to beat Nakamoto in the race. It is a joint work with Professor Dongning Guo in Northwestern. So the big question behind this talk is like Professor Feng has just said, if an adversary is as smart and strategic as possible, how safe are Bitcoin-like longest chain protocols? So in particular, we will see that we can actually solve this question optimally. What does that mean? It means actually we can identify the best possible attack. And since we know what is the best possible attack, we can derive the exact safety security trade-off of all kind of proof of work longest chain protocol. And along the way, I will need to have some tools from stochastic process and Markov decision theory. But I will try to make the intuition clear and spend time on pictures and examples rather than just formulas. Also, please, if you have any question, please just turn on your mic and stop me and ask question if you have at any time. Feel free to do that. Okay, so let's begin with a quick refresher of Bitcoin's consensus mechanism. It's not because the audience needs Bitcoin 101, but because these elements form the mathematical backbone of our model. So first, Bitcoin is a distributed ledger. Every node keeps a local copy of the blockchain, and each node independently verifies blocks, and there is no central coordinator or trusted party. Second, we have the proof of work competition. Miners, always say nodes, are repeatedly computing hash functions such that it satisfies the difficulty requirement. And whoever finds a valid nonce gets to propose the next block. And this gives us a Poisson-like block arrival process with some global rate. Third, we have the longest chain fork rule. Among all valid chains, the chain with the largest cumulative work is considered the canonical chain. Honest nodes always extend chain with the most work they know about. And because of the message delays and so on, blocks don't arrive everywhere simultaneously, which means at some moment, different nodes might see different tips. But over time, as messages are delivered, the longest chain tend to dominate. So everything I will do in this talk is to build on this simple set of rules. We have POW, so Poisson-like block arrivals, and longest chain rule, and network delay. The question is, under these rules, how safe is Bitcoin? Okay, so let's talk about safety. Let's consider a transaction you really care about. Maybe you are paying for a car, or it's a gigantic exchange withdrawal. So the transaction is included in some block here, and gradually blocks accumulate on top of it. After a while, the block containing TX, this transaction, TX here, is buried deep in the chain, and everyone feels, I'm comfortable calling it final. However, because of the longest chain rule, the adversary actually has a powerful move. They can mine privately on a fork, and that does not have this TX transaction. If at some time their private fork, like here, becomes longer than the public chain, they can reveal it. Honest nodes have no choice. They must adopt the longer chain. As a result, the block containing the transaction disappears from the canonical chain. And from the protocol point of view, this transaction is no longer in the ledger at all. So if this transaction is a payment to you, you have just been double spent. Aha. Now we see Bitcoin safety is actually probabilistic. We have never a mathematical guarantee that a transaction will stay forever. We only have a probability of safety, which improves as we wait for more confirmations. And the Nakamoto's original paper give an informal Poisson calculation, assuming no explicit network delay and a simplified attack strategy. What we'll do today is introduce a delta synchrony, allow a full adaptive adversary, and ask what is the best possible attack and what is the exact safety probability under that attack. Because safety is probabilistic, users has to wait for confirmation. Here, the transaction TX is included in some block. We count how many blocks are built on top of it. If we count one confirmation, the risk of a hidden longer chain, which as long as is one or longer, is relatively high. But if at 5 confirmation, the risk is way smaller. And at 6 confirmation, which is also the Bitcoin's classic rule of thumb, the risk is even lower. So intuitively, we know that deeper confirmation depths actually means a higher safety. It becomes less and less likely that an adversary can come from behind with a longer sidechain. But of course, there is a cost, that is latency. For Bitcoin, let's suppose each block come around in 10 minutes. Waiting for 6 confirmations means an hour of delay for the user. So there is a fundamental safety latency trade-off here. If you want extremely low risk, you must wait longer. But if you want low latency, like you're just paying for a coffee, you don't have to accept a higher risk. And the natural question is, what does this trade-off look like exactly? And what is the adversary's optimal strategy? So actually, this question has 2 perspectives. The honest node will ask, the transaction I care about has K confirmation. Given what I know about the network, like I can estimate on the delta and the potential adversary, how safe is this transaction? And the adversary would ask a different question. Given everything I have observed, I just want to attack this transaction. How do I maximize the probability of violating the safety of this transaction that has been K confirmed? So we can see that the adversary question is an optimal control problem. The adversary must decide where to mine, when to review blocks, and how to exploit the network delay. And with the answer of the adversary's question, we can then do the probability calculation for honest node's question. Thus, our work focuses on solving the adversary's optimal control problem first. And once we know the best strategy and its successful probability, we automatically know how to calculate the honest node's true safety level to answer the question of the honest nodes. So here are some key modeling assumptions we're using. First, the network is delta synchronous, which is universally used in safety analysis in this area. It means any block that is broadcast by an honest node reaches all honest nodes within time delta. And we assume block arrives are continuous time Poisson process. Honest block has a rate h and adversary has a rate a, and they are independent of each other. And this is consistent with the usual mining model, which each hash attempt is independent and the success times are exponential. And we assume the adversary is Byzantine, which means he can deviate from the protocol and kind of like do whatever he wants. And they also have a full knowledge of the history. We also assume the adversary can break ties arbitrarily in their own favor. And we assume a general proof of work longest chain protocol. Any protocol where the canonical chain is the one with the most cumulative work. So under this assumption, our main goals are: first, we want to identify an optimal adversary attack for POW longest chain protocol under delta synchrony. And second, calculate the exact probability of safety violation as a function of A, H, delta, and K. Actually, it's the same question as asking what is the K, confirmation depth required to achieve a safety probability. And this gives us a safety latency trade-off. So before I dive into our construction, let me situate this work in the literature. So on this slide, you will see beta on the horizontal axis, and this is what we call adversarial mining fraction. And the vertical schematic shows that whether this protocol is safe or unsafe in the limit as k goes to infinity, which means our safe is on the manner of asymptotically. So we know that when beta is larger than 1/2, the system is fundamentally unsafe. A majority adversary can eventually win almost surely, and this information is given by Nakamoto in his white paper. And then earlier work, such as Garay, they provided partial results in the bounded delay network. They established the region which the protocol is actually secure. You can see from the left-hand side, the protocol is secure if the beta is less than this number. But we're also interested in the and later on, there are works by Dembo and Ghazi et al. Is actually interested. There are two different independent groups, but they give us the same fundamental fault tolerance under delta synchrony, which means on the left-hand side, the protocol is asymptotically secure, and on the right-hand side, the protocol is unsafe. So that's it for this part, but then people are interested in the security of finite k. We notice that this is security for infinite k, which is the finite k is actually more practical question. Luckily, private mining attack gives us an unachievable bound, which means it is not safe on the right-hand side. And then Guo and Ren shows an achievable bound, indicating the safety on the left-hand side here. And Ghazi et al. Gives a very close achievable bound in 2022. So, however, even with all of that, until 2023, two gaps remain. First, there is no single identified strategy that is provably optimal against Nakamoto under delta synchrony. And second, there is no exact closed form formula for the violation probability under the optimal strategy. And our contribution here is shown as this additional curve on the dark blue one. And that curve sits on top of all previous results. It gives the exact optimal trade-off for the parameter regime of interest. So to get here, we have to carefully model the block tree and adversaries control problem. But now, let's first look at a concrete example to build up some intuition. I have just mentioned a private mining attack in the previous slide. What does it mean? It means in this world, the adversary will secretly mine a private chain, and he will largely store all the honest blocks to a delta synchrony. Let's see. Here we set the confirmation depths k equal 4 and show a private mining attack. The first one is Genesis block, and the second one is an A block. And now, as an adversary, I want to violate this A block's safety. So I build a top 2. I build my block 2 here. Oh, is another honest block, block 3. Aha! And notice here, block 4 is not built upon block 3. Instead, is built upon block 1. Why? Because when block 4 arrives, block 3 is not yet public. It means the mining time of block 4 is less than the mining time of block 3 plus delta. And since the adversary wants to keep the public height as low as possible, it largely stored the honest people's view so that this block 4 is not mined upon block 3, instead is mined upon block 1, which is already public at that time. And then block 5 comes, unluckily, block 3 is already public at the moment, so block 5 has to be and only can be built upon block 3 or 4. Here is no difference, so we just put it on block 3. And then we have block 6, block 7, block 8. The same thing happened again. Block 6 is not public yet, so block 8 is built on top of block 5. You can see that given this block arrival sequence, the safety of block 1 is not violated. So this example shows that the naive private mining is actually not sufficient to optimally violate the safety under delta synchrony. And we need a more sophisticated attack that carefully coordinates mining and release time. And the challenge is that the tree encodes all history randomness, and naively it has infinite many possible shapes. And the attack we'll see later, which is bait and switch. But here you can see how private mining is going. So finally, the adversary actually facing what we model as a Markov decision problem. Here, we design a reward structure so that the expected total reward from any starting state is exactly the probability of eventually violating the safety of the target transaction. And if we let V star S denote the optimal state value, which is the maximal probability of success starting from state S, the Bellman optimal equation is shown. So here, I think people must be familiar with it. The AS is the set of actions available from state S, and RSA alpha is the immediate reward from action alpha in state S, and the P is the transaction kernel. So in principle, if we could solve this Bellman equation, we could know exactly first how its adversary should act in every possible state. What is the optimal action alpha here? And what is the maximal violation probability, which is simply just this state value V. So one way to model this system is actually view-based and is largely used in academia. So at time t, the state st collects nodes 1's local block tree, nodes 2's local block tree, up to, let's say there are n participants in the system, so up to n different block tree. And we can see that the adversary actually has continuous time actions. He has to continuously choose where to mine, which is which parent to extend, and controlling the propagation delay for blocks it relays, and within the delta bound. And any new honest block appears in the honest node's local tree immediately, and then must be propagated to all other honest nodes' view within delta. So this model is extremely detailed and is very realistic, but from an MDP perspective, it is actually a nightmare, so very, very difficult to solve. The challenging we are facing here is first, exploding state space. We would need to track the entire block tree, the mining time of each block, and each node's view at a continuous time manner, which makes the problem intrinsically very difficult for example, reinforcement learning. We also have large dynamic action space. At each moment, the adversary can choose which parent to mine on and how to delay the block for each honest node. And we have continuous time dynamics. Block arrivals are Poisson in continuous time, not discrete in rounds. And analytical intractability. Even writing the Bellman equation is possible, but solving it is actually not very practical. So if you want a mental picture, think about an adversary as playing a real-time board game on this tree. Every time a new block appears, either from an honest miner or themselves, they move a token, deciding which chain to push and whether to expose or hide certain branches. Also, they have to engineer every honest node's view at a continuous time in order to indirectly choose the or not choose or affect the parent of honest block. So their goal is to maneuver the game into a state where there exists a longer chain that includes the victim block and is consistent with the delta synchrony. So the difficulty is that the number of possible tree configurations is gigantic. If we try to run dynamic programming directly over all trees, we'll be dead in the water. And this motivates the abstract steps that come next. First, we must simplify the action space. And second, we have to compress the state space into a small set of sufficient statistics. And these two operations are what we call enhanced adversary and state training. So let's start with enhanced adversary. The idea is to slightly over-empower the adversary in a way that actually simplifies the analysis. So we assume that at each block arrival time, the adversary can instantly choose any feasible parent on the current block tree to mine on, and does not have to worry about subtle differences in the honest node's view at all. So instead of tracking all honest views individually, we imagine a setting where the adversary has enough control to only care about the weakest view of them all, and that could cause a reorganization. The point is actually quite subtle. What we do is making the adversary non-causal. A causal adversary actually needs to decide constantly which honest node mines after which block continuously by exploiting the network delay, so that once the honest block is mined, it can be on the correct place that the adversary would like it to be. However, our enhanced adversary does not need to worry about the mining power distribution at all. We simply let him choose the parent of the block after the block is mined, which is modeled by a Poisson process. And this is something, in practice, the adversary cannot actually do. You can see that this illustrated slide. The enhanced adversary attack space strictly contains the original attack space. And that means any strategy available to a real adversary is also available to this enhanced one. Because if we can find an optimal strategy in this enlarged attack space, and if this strategy is also implementable in the original system, then we have found the true optimal attack, which is our bait and switch attack. So why do we do this? Why do we have to give this enhanced adversary some more power? Because it actually removes the need to consider each individual's view. Instead, we only have to consider the weakest view. So rather than keep track of nodes 1's view, nodes 2's view, and so on, we just ask, oh, what is the worst possible view among all of those honest nodes that is consistent with delta synchrony and the block tree? Given this, the adversary actions reduces to, at each block arrival, decide which parent to extend. So we have simplified this action space quite a bit, from controlling the view of each single honest node to we just have to we just have to decide what is the parent block of this new arriving block. It is useful to compare this to a classical idea in information theory and control. So sometimes we upper bound an adversary by giving them more information or more power, because that makes the analysis cleaner. Here, by aggregating honest view into one weakest view, we effectively give the adversary maximum leverage over propagation delay, but in a system and analyzable way. However, even with a single weakest view, the underlying block trees is still gigantic. It's huge. It has shape, it has height, and it has timestamps. This leads us to the second key of our work, which is state trimming. State trimming is where we achieve a huge dimensionality reduction here. Our goal is retain only minimal sufficient statistics that can affect the adversary's future rewards, which we know is to affect the adversary's final probability of safety violation. We show that for the purpose of maximizing probability, the adversary only needs to track a compressed state. So let me try to explain the components. M here is the height of the second highest branch. First, branch is defined by this way. So given a target block we're considering, there might be different block on this same height of this target block, and each different block becomes a branch. And M is the second highest branch. D is the height of the highest non-public honest block. So above height D, everything is still within, everything being mined is not yet visible at all. It has to be adversary block. And N is the height of the highest branch in the block tree. And for each height I to minimum D and M up to N, Li is the time left until the earliest block at height I become public due to the delta synchrony constraint. And the result benefits are a low dimensional state space and action space, a way to perform tractable state comparison, and no need for heavy dynamic programming on enormous tree. The key intuition, as written on the slide, is that once we marginalize our fork shape and internal timestamp, decisions depend only on how far behind or far ahead the adversary is, and how much time they have before public blocks must be reviewed. This trimmed state turns a completely intractable MDP problem into something we can actually analyze. Now, how do we prove that this trimming is sufficient? The basic idea is a monotonic and dominance argument. We show that if two 4-block trees project to the same trim state S, and then for any adversary strategy, the distribution of future trim states under enhanced model is actually the same. Therefore, any policy for one can be simulated on the other without changing its success probability. Conversely, any attempt to distinguish between two full such block trees to use extra information beyond S cannot actually increase the success probability because the future transitions depend only on the relative heights and the delta trimming remaining times. And this part of the proof, which is saying why we can trim the state like this, is given by our full paper. We further prove that for a given state in the compressed form, the state belongs to a safety violation if and only if the shorter branch is longer, not strictly longer or equal to the public height and the confirmation depth K. In order to make you understand it better, we give an example. So in this example, we can see that we start from state 133 O delta delta. So what does that mean? It's actually the first block tree here. We have a shorter branch on height 1 that is constituted by block 0 and block 2. And the highest non-public block is block 4, is on height 3. And we also have a highest branch, which is this chain 4. It's also has a height 3. And 0 delta delta means, on height 1, the smallest timer, so the block is already public, which means the timer is delta, and on height 2 and 3, the time to public is delta here. Oh, sorry, the previous one is 0. And then we assume an A block occurs after time 1/3 delta, and transitioning the state into 133, 0, this thing, I'm just not gonna read it. What does this A mean? This A means at this state, there is an A block comp. Okay, what the adversary do? So let's suppose the adversary decide to put this A block on top of block 2 on the shorter branch. And then this transition our state into 233, 3/2 delta, 3/2 delta. Then we suppose after another 1/3 time, there is an A block coming. And then this H block coming. So this H block will transition the state into this. And let's suppose this adversary is very smart. This adversary let this H block to be mined on top of block 5. Knowing that when block 6 is mined on block 5, immediately block 5 also has a timer delta, which means block 5 and block 6 will both be public in time delta. If you look at the state, you will realize, oh, the highest public height is actually lower than height 3, and also the second highest branch, the shorter branch, is higher than both public height and like we said, the here, sorry, and this K, which is confirmation depth. So if our confirmation depth K is indeed less than equal to 3, we actually created a safety violation here. Oh, you can see that in this case, a transaction in block 1 is no longer safe. Okay, now once we have this trimmed state, we can apply some deep results from Markov decision theory. So first one is we need two lemma. If we have a conserving Markov decision rule, D, the conserving Markov decision rule means it satisfies the Bellman equation, then a equalizing stationary policy is optimal. In other words, repeatedly applying the same decision rule at each step is enough. And the second very important thing is for stationary conserving policy and for ending stopping time, the state value at state S is expectation of the state value as ending stopping time T following pi star, which is the optimal policy starting from state S. So lemma second is also proved by in great details in our paper if you're interested in the theory. So I will not go through the full details, but a high-level story is we can do state comparison at any chosen stopping time that is convenient in order to avoid using any dynamic programming. So this provides the theoretical foundation of the optimality of our proposed bait and switch attack under POW longest chain protocol with delta synchrony. And there are three remaining technical tasks. First, how to choose this stopping time T, how to systematically explore the entire state space under the trimmed representation, how to explore the entire action space. All of these are handled in 4 paper. They are very heavy on math, so I'm not going to talk about it in details, but the main takeaway for this talk is captured by next slide. Under POW, the longest chain protocols and the delta synchrony, bait and switch maximize the probability of safety violation. So now, let's look at how this attack operates in an example. In this example, all the block arrivals are given in the same way as the previous private mining attack. So this part is still same as private mining attack. We know that the fourth block is arrive before the block 3 is public. But instead of private mining, put the block 4 on top of block 1. In bait and switch, we actually put this block 4 on top of our adversarial block 2. And the same block 5, block 6, block 7, and we know block 8, and we put this block 8 on top of block 7. So you can see that we actually create a safety violation with the exact same block arrival sequence. The key here is adversary can actually public adversarial block to trick on its node, contribute to a side chain of the adversary, and exploiting the network propagation delay. So now we're ready for some quantitative result. Here we fix the parameters roughly matches the Bitcoin. Total mining rate with A plus H to be 1/10 minutes, and network delay is assumed to be 10 seconds. And the plot shows the exact probability safety violation as a function of confirmation depths, okay, for different adversary fraction beta. The red curve corresponds to beta equal 0.1, so 10% adversary, and the blue one corresponds to beta equal 0.25, which is 25% adversary. And the y-axis is on a log scale from probability 1 to probability 10 to the minus 16. So this message, the message of this curve is for a small adversary, the safety probability decays pretty quickly with K. But for a larger adversary, like 25%, you need much more longer confirmation depths to achieve the same safety level. And importantly, these curves are exact under our model. They come from a closed form expression derived in the paper, not from any type of approximate simulation. So for any given adversarial fraction and delay delta, you can now say, oh, if I want the probability of safety violation to be, let's say, 10 to the minus 6, here is exactly how many confirmation I need. So let's say it's probably like 12 or something. This moves the conversation from heuristic, 6 confirmations seem safe, to rigorous parameter-dependent guarantee. Safety and latency are not only trade-off, there's also throughput. On this slide, we bring in block size and block rate. If you make blocks larger or increase the mining rate, you can actually increase throughput. But you might ask, you may have the following: increasing propagation delay, increase the probability of forks, and thus harm our safety. So we pose and solve the following design problem. For a given maximal adversarial fraction, here, let's say up to 40%, a safety target like 10%, how should we choose the block size and block interval to maximize our throughput? The figure shows a throughput vs latency. The shaded region labeled achievable here on the right-hand side correspond to throughput latency points that do satisfy the required safety level. And on the right-hand side, written unachievable, that means there's no way longest chain POW protocol can achieve this kind of safety. You can also see marks from some real system like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and Ethereum POW. And they are set relative, they sit relative to the theoretical boundary here on the right-hand side. We can see that actually Bitcoin is pretty conservative. So the main takeaway is that the longest chain POW protocols face a fundamental throughput latency safety trade-off. And our analysis gives the exact boundary of what is the achievable under delta synchrony. And this is the main very important literature we use in our analysis. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot for the great presentation. Like many of the materials can be used for teaching purpose. Very good. Yeah, excellent. And I really enjoy your rounding example. First, you show that the private attack it didn't work, and then but later with your optimum strategy, it works, right? It leads to safety violation. So,
Yes.
and maybe for the sake of time, right, maybe I will first start a quick question, and then I will give the time to our online audience, right? And on my side, I have maybe many questions because I'm familiar, right, with this topic. Okay, so quick question. One thing, my collaborators and I, right, including Jinge, Jerry, and Huang, right, we didn't kind of realize is this so-called enhanced adversary, right? So smart and elegant, and immediately I can say it simplified many things. So here is my question: what is the key inspiration, and for you, right, to explore this elegant direction? I'm just curious.
Yes. So actually it start from it's kind of like back forward engineer. So Professor Guo and I talk about, we feel like actually we probably already know, before all of this model things, we probably feel like we already know what's the optimal strategy. We feel it's just very close to private mining, but we can exploit some honest block at some time when delta synchrony allow us to do so. So if we, let's say we know this, we have this bait and switch policy in mind, and we look at it, what is exactly are the adversary doing? We find that the adversary is not doing anything too fantastic. Is simply using the fact who is the longest chain, what information is public. With these two information, we realize, oh, adversary doesn't have to distribute mining power at all. Adversary doesn't have to care about any specific honest nodes. Adversary only have to care about what is public. That's it. What is public? This information, this definition actually include all we need by saying weakest view. So we come from the backward, and then we say, okay, weakest view. We always know weakest view at any moment. We doesn't have to know this before which block is gonna come, this block is gonna come. No, we that's something out of our control because it's simply delta synchrony.
Right.
That's why we say, what if the adversary have the ability to place the block after the block comes? And then we do this way. And then in this, like you said, is simply simplify the analysis.
Yeah.
And we are very lucky to prove that indeed our back engineer is actually valid and what we have in mind is indeed optimal. So it's like, yeah, it's quite a bit of luck, I would say.
Wow, wow, congratulations again. Wow, cool, cool. Okay, so I will turn it over to our online audience. Yeah, if you have any questions, and feel free to unmute yourself.
It's gonna stop.
Yeah, maybe I can do this. I can ask my second question, right? Maybe our online audience need some extra time. Good. So my second question, for the everything is a race paper, there is a key concept called Nakamoto blocks, right? That like many of the proofs are related to those Nakamoto blocks. So I'm curious, right? Is there any like a similar concept in your proof, right? If yes, and what is the relation, right, between some interesting concept for your proof and the Nakamoto blocks in their proof?
Okay. So if I'm remembering correctly, I think David Shi's paper about Nakamoto block is a block. They never say which is the block, but we know there exists such a block. Once this block is mined, will remain on every honest longest chain forever. And their result shows that under honest majority and properly chosen rate, such block exists with overwhelming probability, so that the whole block Bitcoin protocol is safe.
Yes.
Here we identify the unique optimal attack called bait and switch, and this maximizes the probability that given a K-confirmed block will never become a Nakamoto block. So if we say this block is never become a Nakamoto block, it means this block is not safe. Second, under this optimal attack, we derive a closed form expression of the violation probability. And equivalently, it means we can get the exact tail distribution of this type of Nakamoto block as a function of adversarial power and the network delay.
Interesting.
Rather than just like upper bounds and lower bounds. Yes. But yeah. Thank you.
Let me add a little bit to that.
Please.
So in that Dempo et al. Paper, they introduced Nakamoto block, but they're talking about infinite confirmation delay. So
correct.
Nakamoto block is asymptotically permanent. So in our context, we're looking at a finite confirmation to finite error probability, right? So no block is completely safe, right? So in that sense, now, but we observe the following phenomena. So if the honest chain, one of the chains grow to the confirmation height, that confirms a block, and that's also public, let's say, everybody sees that. Then all the honest mining power will be concentrated on that one. And the adversary is behind. And the adversary can only use their own blocks to catch up.
Correct.
Under this circumstance, because honest mining power is higher, you can calculate the probability that the adversary is permanently behind. In that sense, that tip of the honest chain is a Nakamoto block.
Wow.
Not only probabilistically. So you can say that you calculate the probability to say that with probably 90% it is a Nakamoto block, right? So in that sense, that's what we use, in fact, in our analysis, so that it is while it is a game that runs permanently long, so this runs forever. But the actual Markov chain that we needed to deal with is only runs up until the confirmation depth.
Correct.
After that, we don't need to worry about a Markov anymore. After that, it's either at that point either the adversary has won already. That's confirmation height, or the adversary is still behind. And then the only probability we need to calculate is what is the chance it catches up. It's not we don't need to quite worry about the state transitions anymore.
Right.
But before that, all the states need to be in some ways accounted. They need to be accounted for. Yeah, but then that's a finite state problem.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Now the collection is very clear. Cool. Oh, sorry. Maybe we are already over time. Yeah. For online audience, right? If you have any questions, and please feel free to write an email to Shu-Jie or Professor Dongling Guo. Okay. So thanks everyone for your attention, and thanks again for our speaker and Professor Guo. Maybe I will book a separate meeting with you later. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
And have a nice day, everyone. Yeah. See you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.